This week on Paul N Saul, a girl has been missing for several days now after a boating trip gone wrong. 2 arrests at Crestview High School for alleged sexual impropriety. Wawa gets its development order. And this is how much money those speed cameras brought in their first month and a half in Niceville. Chopper crash in Destin sends 4 to the hospital. And finally, are the fire departments in our area on the verge of a merger? Well, possibly. Plus, we'll talk about a potential $4.2 million payday for the city of Niceville as it tries to expand its fire protection within the city. Today's show is brought to you by Steve Shutt and the folks at Movement Mortgage. Here's the thing, you're going to need a mortgage. You're just going to need one unless you're independently wealthy like a baron or a count or something. Do we still have barons and counts in this world? I don't think so. In Europe, maybe, but not here in the good old US of A. And that's why you need to talk to the folks at Movement Mortgage. These guys do what all the other big mortgage dudes do. They get mortgages to you, but they do a couple of things a little bit differently. They hold on to your loan a little bit longer so that when you talk to your mortgage loan officer in a year from after you get the mortgage, they know what they're talking about. They've seen your stuff before. They know who you are. It's pretty cool. And the other thing you need to know is that the money that they make, of course, goes to pay them and take care of business, but the extra money, everything on top of that, a big portion of everything on top of that goes to help local communities that need new schools, that need other things, outreach, stuff like that. They even help here in Niceville by supporting agencies like CALM, the Crisis Aid for Littles and Moms. It's harder to say for me than it should be, but when you get a mortgage at Movement Mortgage with Steve Shutt, you can help support this community. So check them out, Movement Mortgage, and just type in Steve Shutt, or you can give them a call at 850-897-8971, or you can head to the link in the description of this video. So now that we've paid the bills, Paul, let's start with the story that you've added just very late, because I didn't add it because we had very little information about it up until this morning. A little girl has gone missing on a boat trip over Father's Day weekend. Paul, what do you know?
Well, that's what's interesting. It didn't actually happen over a boating trip. So her mother's boyfriend, who was on the trip, released a video this morning or late last evening giving details on their full day. And so they actually were on vacation from Arkansas, and they were staying in Panama City, and they did take a boat out near Panama City that morning when Trinity went missing. However, they actually came to Destin and were swimming at the jetties for a few hours, and that's actually where Trinity went missing. So the family had spent a few hours swimming. My take based on his story is that the tides switched on them and there was some significant current, and they were safe all late afternoon and into the early evening. And then when the tides switched, the current just became really challenging, and Trinity was at that point lost. And there was a fairly significant attempt to save her, not only in the short term, a couple of guys on a boat, a woman on a paddleboard, but they were able to save the boyfriend, the mom, the boyfriend's son, but were unable to pull Trinity onto the boat before she was swept away. And we're now filming this on the 16th, and they're still looking for her. Unfortunately, at this point, I think reading in between the lines, it's obviously a recovery mission and not much hope in finding her alive. But there is a GoFundMe that has been put out. The community in Destin has definitely, in Niceville area, have wrapped their arms around this scenario. Nobody likes to see things like this happen. It is a reminder to everyone who vacations here and lives here that the water is dangerous. It changes over the course of a day. You really need to pay attention to not only the weather, but the tides. And probably the number one thing you can teach your kids, and even as adults, is not to panic and to learn how to float. If you don't panic and you actually either front float or back float and yell for help, you have a much better chance of survival than if you panic and you thrash against the current. So sad story, but I wanted to make sure we kind of told it from beginning to end. I know they're still searching for her, but at this point, it does appear to be a recovery mission.
Moving on to the next story this week, also involving the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Department. There have been 2 arrests at Crestview High School this week for illicit activity, sexually inappropriate activity between employees and students. So we'll talk a little bit more about the first man that was arrested, Timothy John Sexton, who was taken into custody at his home earlier this week. And the weird thing about this story is that it dates to more than 20 years ago.
The sheriff's office said Sexton is charged with sexual battery by a person in custodial authority. And I guess the victim was between the ages of 12 and 18. And the arrest warrant was issued about 10 days ago on this.
Yeah, and the investigators also told all the news outlets that are covering this story that this allegedly took place in April of 2001 when the victim was 14. And of course, he was 25-ish years younger. He was 34 at the time when he was teaching at Pryor Middle School, which is over in Fort Walton Beach, and that abuse reportedly and allegedly continued until 2005 when the victim was 17.
Yeah, that's crazy. What's kind of interesting about this case is it came to light over a report that was submitted via the Fortify Florida app, which is a way people can anonymously report suspicious activity that it's happening in Florida schools. So seems like that kind of system worked.
And this is like, I think the second or third time we've mentioned Fortify Florida in this past month. So it's good to see people actually using that to report stuff. I believe that was also used in this other case we're going to talk about in a minute. But as to the disposition of Sexton, the man that's alleged to have committed these crimes, he's been put on administrative leave from Crestview High School. And investigators say that he didn't just let things be. He actually went ahead and messaged the alleged victim in this case on Facebook. Again, all the evidence will have to bear out in court, but allegedly the police or law enforcement say that he said, quote, "I hope I didn't mess you up" in this message. So have you, I know Marcus Chambers said something about this. Do you have it in front of you?
Yeah. So Chambers, first of all, I just think it's crazy that guy that messaged the victim. What are you trying to hope to accomplish there after years of abuse? Chambers said that his recommendation is to suspend without pay. Pending the criminal proceedings, and the district notified the Florida Department of Children and Families and Law Enforcement immediately after they received the tip. So it seems like, at least from a Okaloosa County Schools perspective, they're handling this appropriately.
Yeah, and the sheriff's office put out a statement as well, talking tough on this. So we'll see how this goes. It's in the hands of the state attorney at this point, but I believe that Sexton is still, or has been put in the Okaloosa County Jail at this point, right?
Yep, being held without bond.
Right on. Well, moving on to our next story, this Wawa development order. You're the development guy, brother. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, everyone keeps talking about Wawa and wants to know what's going on with it. So it definitely got its development ordered, approved. And so Wawa's coming to Niceville. If you don't know, Wawa is a Pennsylvania-based convenience store chain. It's gotten fairly popular.
Are you saying it's basically like Buc-ee's for Yankees?
Kind of.
Yeah, okay.
But it is sort of like a more higher end convenience store.
Fancy Buc-ee's is what you're telling me.
Buc-ee's is pretty
Frou-frou
fancy
Buc-ee's.
too.
That's what I'm saying. That's my people.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. But the chain definitely got a green light from Niceville's technical review committee to move forward with their construction plans.
And so this technical review committee, the city just changed over from like voting on every single development with every single extenuating or non-extenuating circumstance ever to this like technical review committee model. And as a developer, Paul, what does that mean for guys like you?
Well, because the technical review committee has the power to approve or reject projects within the existing city limits. So instead of waiting for like a full council meeting and going through a long, prolonged process, these smaller projects can just move along a lot faster.
All right. I guess that makes a lot of sense, right? Step by step, but not as high level, especially when, it's already zoned commercial or whatever. So there's not a whole lot of stuff to go through. I guess get it done a little bit quicker.
Yeah. And for the listeners who might not know, development order is basically the city's formal approval for the project. And once that is in place, the developer can apply for a construction permit and everything can kind of move forward with construction.
Yeah. And I guess give everybody listening at home like a timeline on this. They initially announced the Wawa Gate, I guess, but in a positive way back in January. And with this development order, the word on the street from city manager David Deitch is that late summer is probably a good expectation for groundbreaking. I don't know if there's going to be like a groundbreaking ceremony or anything, but after that, probably 6, 7, 8 months until it's done.
Yeah. I mean, I think the construction project portion of it is sort of an unknown, right? But I do know that the city hopes to kind of use this technical review committee more often so that they can speed the timeline up to bring additional businesses to Niceville, which I think is great. And of course, the social medias are mixed on this. If you've been to a Wawa, you really love the Wawa. If you have never been to one or hate convenience stores, you're like, great, another gas station and convenience store in Niceville.
The one take I wasn't expecting from the Wawa thing is I posted our story on the Wawa Reddit. Getting more and more into Reddit. I sound like an old person. I'm getting into the Reddit, fellas. But like the Reddit basically said, like, I'm having a harder and harder time defending Wawa because the quality is not what it used to be. And so I asked my office neighbor, Lori, over here, I was like, hey, how do you feel about Wawa? 'Cause she's from Maryland. Maryland's basically, Wawa country. And she said, yeah, it's still pretty good. So I don't know what everybody's complaining about. It's Lori approved, which makes me feel good.
There you go. Well, you originally had this story back in January, and we'll continue to kind of update it as the project progresses.
We will get you your Wawa updates. Leave you me.
Speedily.
All right. Speedily, with rapidity, with haste. Speaking of haste and speed cameras that have just been installed in the last couple months near Ruckel Middle School, Niceville High School, have been in place for a few months now, and they are bringing in the cheddar for the city of Niceville. Paul, what are you seeing there, man?
Well, the city installed these cameras earlier this year and started issuing tickets in April. There was like a grace period where they just kind of sent them to let people know that, hey, if you keep doing this, you're going to get a fine. And in just about 6 weeks, they handed out almost 1,000 tickets. I think it was like 955 tickets.
And so they're all worth $100 a piece. That means that the city gross, not brought in, but these cameras generated $100,000 in revenue for various agencies. And you have the breakdown in front of you, like where all this money goes, right?
Yeah, but there's a couple of things I want to make sure people know. One, it only gets triggered if you go 10 miles an hour or over the speed limit. So there is like a little bit of grace period there.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, they are consistently pulling people over who are going 14 and 16 over the speed limit, or giving them tickets, I mean, via this system, not pulling them over. So in that 6 week period, you're right, $95,000. Out of the $100 ticket, 60 goes to the city, 20 goes to the Florida Department of Revenue's general fund, and then 12 is allocated to the county school district for safety improvements and transportation and just to kind of make things better. And then 5 of the dollars goes to support crossing guards, recruitment and retention of those crossing guards. And then $3 goes to the state law enforcement training fund. So the $100 gets spread across, pretty significant number of people.
Everybody gets a cut. And if you're curious, where's the company's cut? I believe it comes out of the city's $60. I believe they have a $28,000 a month minimum. So that means that the city would roughly keep about $30,000 out of this whole situation ship. So the city of Niceville has already received $57,000 gross from these, but you got to remember that the company that is running these things is also going to have a cut of that comes out. So the rest of that money, that's pretty good. I mean, 30 grand is still 30 grand, like in a month, but they're not going to collect any revenue this summer while they're off.
Correct. So the cameras are off right now, and they're only running during the school day, and they only run for 3 hours a day on those school days during when kids are headed to school and when kids are being released from school.
Yeah. And Mayor Daniel Henkel talked about, he's kind of one of those like guys who sees it as like a necessary evil, these traffic cameras, I would say. I don't know if that's totally fair to make that assertion, but he basically says, one child injured is too many. And he hopes that this is like a behavioral change agent, where he doesn't want to give everybody fines, because that's typically not how you win elections. But
Sure, I mean, I think that makes sense. I mean, the goal is a behavioral change, not to generate revenue. Although, I mean, I actually think the community is pretty much behind these two sets of cameras.
I would say so. I mean, I've seen like 1 or 2 comments that are like the 4th Amendment, the 5th Amendment, but like,
listen,
don't speed.
Yeah. I mean, don't speed. I mean, actually, probably the backlash on this has been, why is there such a big limit between the speed limit and when you get a ticket of that mile per hour? And maybe it should be lowered. So I don't know.
I think it's really important because there's plenty of kids, and there's a story that we covered or will cover this week when this episode comes out about a kid named Corbin Chasen who got with the city after he did a school project and wrote an essay to the city manager and said, hey, we need to put a sidewalk close to Plu Elementary because of all the people that are driving cars and moving quickly and all the pedestrian traffic from kids walking to school. So, I mean, I think that the 10-mile-an-hour limit is probably too generous.
Well, I think it's probably mandated by the state. I think if we talk to David, right? It's a mandated amount. We don't get to change it, but yeah,
I think getting in our city business.
Yeah, it's true. I think the community's behind it. Next story here is about the touring helicopter that crashed at the Destin Executive Airport last week. Saul, What did you think? How did Mid-Bay News report this, and what do we know right now?
So a little bit of backstory on all these helicopters. This is the Timberview Helicopter Company. So I want you guys to think about every time you see a helicopter flying like 100 feet off the deck, really fast, really low, close to the beach, that are doing those shuttles for tourists. This is those helicopters, right? And these they have a takeoff spot on 98, but they also have one at Destin Executive Airport, and that's where this incident happened. So the helicopter apparently had a hard landing, or it tipped, or it just straight up crashed. And there's pictures on our website that you can see. 4 people got sent to the hospital, all non-life-threatening injuries, so everybody is going to be okay eventually. But it looks like this happened about 6:45 in the evening. Emergency crews were out there really quickly, and the sheriff's department says, or at least their airport security unit says, they're not really sure who caused or what caused the crash yet. So really, we're looking at more and more information, but this is a kind of a long-running, simmering feud between the airport's department, which recently lost a lawsuit to Timberview Helicopters about their access to the airport. So this is more bad blood. The airport is now shut down until the FAA can get in and figure out exactly what happened. And that is a whole process when the FAA gets
Is it
involved in
still
a
shut
crash.
down now? Because that happened days ago.
It happened days ago, but we haven't gotten it all clear on Destin Executive. So I don't want to say, hey, it's open now. But it has been, they shut it down for a significant period of time, at least 1 or 2 days. And I haven't heard any changes. And this is Monday. So my understanding is that it is still closed at this moment. I could be wrong, and we'll update it in the comments when it happens. But yeah, it's one of those things, man, that's just kind of nuts.
Yeah, I don't really care for the touring helicopters, but I understand the tourist benefit and, getting that unique experience to fly over our Emerald Coast. So, I definitely respect the business and the ability for it to continue. It'll be super interesting to see what the cause of this is. Whenever there's a helicopter or a plane crash, it's usually fairly deadly. It'd be super interesting to find out that, maybe the pilot made some really good decisions that saved some deaths here. Or, maybe they weren't way up in the sky and it was just some sort of landing issue right at the last minute.
Freak accident, mechanical failure, pilot error, pilot heroship. I don't know. I mean, we just don't know yet at this point.
Well, the fact that nobody died is fantastic. So that's good.
Yeah. Moving on to another call, I guess, from us for a fire department and or city merger. The Valparaiso Fire Department's having some tomfoolery go down, and I just got a phone call that I literally just hung up on when we got up on this call for Paul N Saul that says that I'm probably going to be busy with the Valparaiso Fire Department for the next month. That's a teaser. But the independent fire chief, who was a contractor technically, no longer works as the fire chief over there at Valparaiso.
Yeah, that's also interesting. I guess I didn't realize the last time we talked. So it's a contracted consultant, so he wasn't really a full-time employee?
So he was a consultant for the fire department, which means he didn't have like benefits and stuff. They paid him a rate, and he was the chief, but he was not an employee. It's very kind of like, gosh, I'm trying to think. It's almost like the first thing that pops to mind is like Blackwater instead of the U.S. Army. They both kind of serve the same function, but one of them is private and the other one is not. So he's not a full-time city employee. And it looks like the new chief, David Lanier, is a city employee. He's been pulled up from a lower rank to be the chief over there. And he, at his first meeting, highlighted the fire department's new shirts as a way to differentiate themselves from Niceville, which I thought was an interesting thing to bring up in a government meeting, but okay.
Interesting. Okay, so are things now running a little bit better under Lanier?
No.
Jeez.
So just out of the gate, and this is by his own admission, they've got a staffing shortage. There are a lot of people doing a lot of different things. Not only are they getting ready to fight fires, or supposedly getting ready to fight fires, and that's going to come up later, probably after this episode releases. They're also doing inspections, arson investigations, grant writing, all the stuff. And it's a lot, especially when my understanding is they have 7 active fighters on staff. So that's 2 per shift, which is pretty skinny.
And that's not really the only challenges that they currently have going on. I mean, they dealt with the firehouse, right? And the mold issue there.
I just talked to a firefighter today, and he says that they are literally staying at a hotel because the black mold, yes, the black mold in the Valparaiso Fire Department building is so bad that they have to get rid of it. They spent $100,000 to remediate this building, and it's still got black mold in it. And so they can't move back in even after spending $100,000 to make this thing happen.
Have there been any degradation in department performance and like issues with actually putting out fires or?
So according to the chief, he says it's all well, kind of gives me Animal House vibes. And he says that they answer 98.2% of the calls they get. I would hope that that was 100, but okay. And so we're kind of in the same place that we've been with this fire department, where it doesn't seem like everything is moving in the way that it should.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this last week from a bigger picture perspective. You know, around the Twin Cities area, there's 4 separate fire departments. There's Niceville, East Niceville, Valparaiso, and North Bay. You know, they're all within 3 miles of each other. They all have their own leadership, their own taxing authority, where their source of money comes from. It just seems like a lot of departments close together, and you know where this is headed.
Yeah, I mean, I actually went ahead and mapped it out. I mapped all the fire departments out because it's one thing to say, oh, they're within 3 miles of each other. They're like within 3, like it's insane how close they are to each other. You can get from one to pretty much any other. Like you can go from Valparaiso's firehouse to Blue Water Bay's firehouse in maybe 10 minutes. And those are the 2 furthest apart. You can get from Valparaiso's firehouse to Niceville's firehouse in 5, 6, 7 minutes if you hit all the green lights. And then Niceville to East Niceville, like I can run pretty easily between those 2. It might be a mile and a half. So that's a lot of fire chiefs for such a small area.
Well, I mean, we said this last week and we'll say it again with the upcoming retirements and recent leadership changes and instabilities. You know, it's probably a smart idea to start considering at least consolidating these fire departments and think about the reduction of cost, the unifying of training, similar procedures, avoid duplicate equipment cost. Like it just seems like it would make sense to merge these things together. What do you think?
And not for nothing, right? Like 95% of their calls, or at least kind of that's the traditional number, are for medical emergencies, not for fires, right? And so you have these huge ladder trucks that are basically sitting in their bays, not being used very much. Not that they're not useful, but like the fact that we can't find a more efficient way to use them or to purchase and maintain them, right? Because every fire department maybe doesn't need a ladder truck, right? Because how many buildings are over 4 stories tall in our area? 0.
Too many.
And so it doesn't make sense to have multiple ladder trucks. It doesn't make sense to have 4 fire chiefs. So it makes sense to innovate, change some stuff up, and combine those resources so that we're actually doing the people's business at the best rate possible.
It's saving money on taxes and operating more efficiently and operating with similar rules and regulations and roles and responsibilities. Yeah, it's just better for the residents overall. So thanks for breaking that down, man.
No worries, man. Well, let's move into our donor shout out real quick. First things first, thanks so much to Debbie for her recurring donation. Recurring donations really help us make this happen, all the news happen. There's crazy stuff flying around all the time, and to be able to fund it and hire people so that I'm not the only one here doing it and tearing my hair out is important, both to making sure you get the information and to my personal mental health. So if you'd like to make a contribution to that, we'd really appreciate it. And we're also very thankful for the people that are sponsoring and promoting the show, which just brings me to Paul's hat. Paul, who you got today?
My hat today, I got Salt and Light Realty, courtesy of John Salman. Salt and Light Realty is a boutique real estate brokerage right here in Niceville. Not only will they help you buy or sell a house, but they will manage your properties and they will do it really well. So if you got a property to manage or you want to buy and sell some real estate, call John Salman at Salt and Light Realty.
Well, not only do I imagine most realtors wish they had a crystal ball all the time, right? Especially nowadays, but as we look ahead in our crystal ball, here's what's coming out here in the next 7 days on midbaynews.com. We had a big council week last week, and there's still a ton of information that's coming out from that we're trying to set up and give you context and say, here's what's going on, here's where you can find this stuff. And that includes a request from the city of Niceville to the Department of Defense for $4.2 million to build a new firehouse over in Deer Moss Creek. Now you may be asking, but Air Force money for bombs? And I'd say you're correct. However, it's from so much more, like missiles. But
nice.
The Department of Defense gives out grants to communities with a huge military presence like ours to help them offset some of those costs that might be associated with having huge bases. And as you might guess, having a huge range out there to protect from wildfires, stuff like that, is a huge cost. And so the city of Niceville has applied for a DoD grant to get $4.2 million to build a new firehouse and kind of get some of the accoutrements that come along with that, so that the fire department, the Eglin Fire Department, can kind of use it as a basing area while the city of Niceville uses it for their day-to-day. But the upswing of this is that we've already gotten $400,000 from the state of Florida to do the design and engineering of this building so it can withstand a Cat 5 hurricane. And if this grant were to come through, we would have a Cat 5 resistant fire department on the east side of town that can both help with fire response for Eglin, but also help protect the rapidly expanding population of the east side of town. And so, I mean, like as a developer yourself, right? Like you see a big fire station like this go in, and what changes in your calculus?
No, I mean, I think it's great for the community, and the fact that the city is going to get a grant to do it is even more amazing. I think nobody would argue with this next statement. David Deitch hired a grant proposal writer, and it's been the biggest return on investment for our city.
He regularly brags at city council about how he pays this guy $60,000 a year, and he's already brought in, I think the last number was like $3.5 million or something, like a very large number.
If he keeps saying that publicly, he's going to have to give the guy a raise at some point. I mean, it's fantastic, and it's something that other jurisdictions, Valparaiso, should consider doing.
Yeah, but Dave, pay the man. Pay the man.
If it were me, I shouldn't say this out loud either, but I'd be like, can I get 5% for each one I get approved?
I mean, honestly, wouldn't that still be a good deal?
Oh, of course it would be a good deal.
I don't know that grants actually work like that, but
no,
if
that's
it did,
not how city government works, unfortunately.
So he's bringing stuff in, and then we also have a report coming in this afternoon from this weekend's No King's Day protest. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 people showed up to the protest to express their mind in Fort Walton Beach about everything from the LGBT issues, the Trump presidency, you name it, kind of the cornucopia of things on the the left half of our political spectrum were down there. No violence, no counter protests. According to our report on the ground, there were 2 or 3 people that were kind of like counter demonstrating, but everything ended peacefully. So yay, First Amendment.
I'll just say that the only king that Paul and Saul serve is the Lord Jesus Christ up above. That's all I'll say about that.
I would second that statement. And then finally, and something I have been working on for 3 months and I'm really excited to brag about, I have been working on a mini documentary about the USS Alabama and Drum and the Alabama Battleship Memorial Park. It's only like an hour and a half drive away. And guys, if that ain't my childhood, I can't tell you what is. I've been to that place 100 times. It is a wonderful museum filled with history and cool hands-on experiences. And so I'm excited to share that with you guys on our YouTube page, the Mid-Bay News YouTube page, now that we are on the Paul N Saul specific Mid-Bay News page.
That's definitely something we should clip. Like maybe right here we could do one that you could clip. But Paul and Saul now have a YouTube page.
Hey,
subscribe, like and subscribe.
Hey, you, right there. You've been watching Paul and Saul for a while now, and it's been on the Mid-Bay News page. But we decided to split it off into the Paul and Saul's page so that you can get that sweet, sweet Paul and Saul content and know exactly where it is. So if you haven't subscribed, we suggest it. Paul and Saul, MBN. That's the name. Look for it.
Wit.
If you're looking for a home or you need to sell yours, my gal Cindy Zimmerman is a great option for you if you need an expert on luxury home marketing. She's a certified luxury home marketer. If you need help finding something in Niceville, my girl's been here for 20 years. So if you are looking for someone to help you buy or sell your home, or if you're PCSing, or if you want to find a rental property to purchase or rent, CindyZSellsHomes.com is the place to go. All right, it's time for our listener mailbag. We're going to start with my favorite comment because it's about my dad, and I'm a big My Dad fan, especially after Father's Day weekend. Deborah says, Stephen is doing an awesome job reporting from South Walton County, and boy howdy, has he had a lot to chew over there. That Walton County Commission has been on one, and they continue to be on one, and when he returns from his well-deserved vacation next week, they will be back in action on next Tuesday. So you will get more South Walton dumpster fire couture headed your way in just a couple of days from our South Walton correspondent, or I guess he's the whole Walton County now, correspondent, Stephen Saul.
Yeah, in fact, Michael said, this is normal for Walton County residents who follow local politics. I would love if someone would do a deep investigation of the Walton County attorney and the corruption that runs too deep.
So I put this one in here because I am becoming more and more familiar day in, day out with Walton County politics, stuff like that. Now there is, I don't want to say, trying to find a neutral word, a grouping an amalgamation of individuals that have been Walton County people forever, 7, 8 generations. And so a lot of people see the Atkinson family. So Sheriff Mike Atkinson, he has a cousin, I believe it's his cousin, who is the interim county attorney and has been so for 4 years. He is the Freeport city attorney. He's the Defuniak Springs attorney. So a lot of people kind of like do one of these whenever they see that name come up. I haven't seen anything that shows that they're corrupt individuals until I see it. I'm not going to like believe it, but
we need some smoke to go with the fire, right?
And I'm not saying there's not smoke. Don't hear me say there's not smoke, but I am saying like, it's small town, right? So how much of it is small town and how much of it is a nefarious cabal bent on ruling Walton County with an iron fist? Well, that's my job to find out. So we'll be, of course, doing some digging as we always do on different things in Walton County, just being among them, because hey, when there are a lot of people from a group of from a family doing stuff, I mean, that's pretty interesting, not for nothing.
So
and then finally, yeah, go ahead.
I have two comments that I haven't shared with you, and it's kind of like pat ourselves on our own back, but
do it.
Sunday at church, the woman in front of me turned around and said, "I really like the Paul N Saul show. I watch it all the time." And I was like, "What? It's crazy."
You did it.
And then a guy at the gym said the same thing. He's like, "I'm really enjoying the content. Thanks for putting that out." And he says he watches it every day. I would use you guys as names, but I didn't ask for permission, so I won't say them out loud.
Fair enough. I had a new friend. I would say I was pumping gas on Father's Day, as one does. And he came up to me. He's like, "Hey, man, I like Paul N Saul." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yes, you." And I was like, "You stop."
Well, I'm not so as used to being seen in public as you are, but if you recognize me, I would love for you to come up and comment on the show rather than giving me weird stares.
Or just give him a hat. He likes the hat.
Him? Yeah, or give me a hat.
Anyway, things last. Again, no King's Day, but that was by far the most commented thing that we've put on our Facebook in quite a while. I think we are up to 450 comments.
I wonder why.
A lot of engagement on that one. And our story will be out on Monday evening. We're putting the finishing touches, following up with people, talking to people on the other side of it, as it were, to see if we can get comment from them. So pay attention for that. And let's go over our stories really briefly today. Like we said, we were talking about Trinity, a girl who's been missing over the weekend after a boating/swimming day. She was on vacation from Arkansas, and so we're praying for a good outcome, but we're pretty much preparing for the worst on that. 2 separate incidents at Crestview High School where 2 individuals were arrested on sexual impropriety, 25-ish years apart. Wawa is getting its development order and could, be selling hoagies. Do they call them hoagies?
I'm not sure what they're going to call them, but yeah, by the end of the year, it could be there. Who knows?
You could have a hoagie-licious Niceville by the end of the year. Who knows? And those speed cameras making money. Chopper crashes in Destin, shuts down the Destin Executive Airport. 4 people sent to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. And could the fire departments of this area be on their way to a merger? I think so. And we will have more information about one fire department very soon. That's called a tease. Paul, you got anything else before we get out of here?
Nah, man, that's a good show today. And last but not least, be nice, Niceville.